The quiet before the storm. Captain Elena Vasquez floated gracefully through the observation deck of the research vessel Terra Nova, her eyes fixed on the infinite canvas of stars stretching before them. The ship hummed quietly as it moved through the void, carrying a crew of 57 humans on humanity's most ambitious deep space exploration mission to date. Elena had spent 12 years working toward this moment, and now, 6 months into their journey beyond the furthest human colonies, she felt the weight of discovery pressing against her consciousness like a physical force. The Terra Nova was not a warship. Built in the orbital shipyards above Mars, it represented humanity's commitment to peaceful exploration rather than conquest. Its hull gleamed with the soft blue glow of advanced research equipment, and its cargo holds contained scientific instruments, cultural artifacts, and gifts meant for any intelligent species they might encounter. Helena had personally overseen the selection of these gifts, choosing items that represented the best of human creativity and peaceful intentions. Dr. Sarah Chen, the mission's chief xenobiologist, approached with excitement evident in her dark eyes. Her small frame seemed to vibrate with nervous energy as she handed Elena a data tablet. "Captain, you need to see this immediately. We've detected something extraordinary." Elena took the tablet and studied the readings displayed on its screen. The data showed energy signatures unlike anything in their databases, emanating from a point roughly 3 light-years ahead of their current position. The patterns were clearly artificial, but they followed mathematical principles that seemed both familiar and alien at the same time. "How long have you been tracking this signal?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the excitement building in her chest. 6 hours, Dr. Chen replied. "At first, we thought it might be a pulsar or some other natural phenomenon, but the patterns are too regular, too intentional. Captain, this isn't random cosmic noise. Someone built whatever is sending this signal." Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, the ship's security chief, joined them at the observation window. Jake was a practical man who had served in the Colonial Defense Forces before joining the exploration program. His weathered face showed the kind of experience that came from years of dealing with dangerous situations, and Elena valued his judgment even when she disagreed with his more cautious approach to first contact protocols. "Captain," Jake said, his voice carrying a note of concern, "I've been monitoring the signal as well. While Dr. Chen is right that it's artificial, I'm worried about the power levels we're detecting. Whatever civilization built this technology is far more advanced than we are. If they're hostile." Elena held up her hand, cutting him off gently. "Jake, we've been through this before. Our mission is peaceful exploration and potential first contact. Yes, we need to be careful, but we can't assume hostility from every species we encounter. That's not who we are as humans." The signal continued to strengthen as they approached its source over the next 18 hours. The crew worked in shifts, analyzing every aspect of the transmission. What they discovered painted a picture of a civilization that had mastered technologies humanity could barely comprehend. The signal appeared to be some form of distress beacon, automatically broadcasting across multiple dimensions and subspace frequencies. Elena called a senior staff meeting in the main conference room. The walls displayed holographic representations of the signal's source, showing a massive construct floating in the void between star systems. The structure was clearly artificial, stretching for dozens of kilometers in every direction, but it appeared to be severely damaged. Sections of its hull showed blast marks and debris fields that suggested some kind of catastrophic event. "Based on our analysis," Dr. Chen reported to the assembled officers, "this structure is at least 50,000 years old. The materials it's constructed from don't match anything in our periodic table. The distress signal has been broadcasting continuously for millennia, waiting for someone to answer." Commander Lisa Park, the ship's communications officer, stood and activated another holographic display. "We've made significant progress in decoding their mathematical language. The signal contains what appears to be a plea for help, along with detailed specifications about their technology and culture. They call themselves the Kythera. Elena studied the translated fragments that appeared on the display. The Kythera had once ruled a vast empire spanning hundreds of star systems. They were builders and engineers on a scale that dwarfed human civilization. But something had gone terribly wrong. Their empire had collapsed, their colonies had gone silent, and now only this single automated beacon remained, crying out across the void for assistance that had never come. "Captain," Jake said carefully, "I understand the appeal of helping them, but we need to consider the risks. A civilization this advanced didn't fall to accident or natural disaster. Something destroyed them, and that something might still be out there." Elena looked around the conference table at her senior staff. These were good people, dedicated scientists and explorers who had left everything behind to venture into the unknown. They had families back on Earth and the colonies, people who were counting on them to return safely. But they had also volunteered for this mission because they believed in humanity's potential to make a positive difference in the galaxy. "I'm not suggesting we ignore the risks," Elena replied. "But think about what this could mean. We might be looking at the last remnant of an entire civilization. If we can help them, if we can learn from them, it could advance human knowledge by centuries. More importantly, it would be the right thing to do." Dr. Chen nodded enthusiastically. "The technological implications alone are staggering. If we could understand even a fraction of their engineering principles, we could solve problems that have plagued humanity for generations. Clean energy, faster than light travel, even life extension technologies." The debate continued for hours, but eventually, Elena made her decision. They would approach the Kythera beacon and attempt to establish communication. It was the kind of choice that defined not just her captaincy, but her understanding of what it meant to be human. Humans didn't ignore cries for help, even when those cries came from the void itself. The Terra Nova changed course and began its approach to the ancient structure. As they drew closer, the details became more impressive and more frightening. The Kythera construct was a masterwork of engineering, but the damage it had sustained spoke of violence on an unimaginable scale. Entire sections had been vaporized by weapons that could destroy continents. Commander Park worked tirelessly to establish a communication protocol with the beacon. The process was complicated by the age of the technology and the fundamental differences between human and Kythera mathematical concepts. But gradually, piece by piece, they began to understand each other. The beacon responded to their first tentative message with what could only be described as joy. After 50,000 years of automated distress calls, someone had finally answered. The artificial intelligence running the beacon had maintained its vigil across the millennia, hoping that someday another intelligent species would hear its plea and respond. Elena personally composed humanity's first official message to the Kythera. She chose her words carefully, emphasizing Earth's peaceful intentions and offering whatever assistance was possible. The message spoke of human values, cooperation, compassion, and the willingness to help others in need, even at personal cost. To the Kythera civilization, Elena dictated as Commander Park prepared the transmission. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Terra Nova. We have received your distress signal and offer our assistance. Humanity comes in peace, seeking friendship and mutual understanding. Tell us how we can help you, and we will do everything in our power to aid your people." The message was transmitted using the communication protocols they had established with the beacon. Elena expected a response within hours, but instead, silence followed. The beacon continued its automated distress calls, but no personal communication came from the Kythera intelligence. Hours turned into days, and still no response arrived. Jake grew increasingly worried as their long-range sensors began detecting unusual energy signatures from deep space. Something was moving out there, something massive and purposeful. "Captain," Jake reported during their fourth day of waiting, "I'm reading multiple objects approaching our position. The energy signatures are consistent with Kythera technology, but the patterns suggest military vessels rather than civilian craft." Elena felt a chill run through her as she studied the sensor readings. A fleet of enormous ships was indeed approaching their location, and their intention was unclear. Each vessel dwarfed the Terra Nova by several orders of magnitude, and their energy weapons could reduce her ship to atoms in seconds. Dr. Chen worked frantically to re-establish communication with the approaching fleet, but their attempts were met with continued silence. The Kythera ships took up positions around the ancient beacon and the human vessel, surrounding them in a formation that looked uncomfortably like a military blockade. Elena realized with growing horror that something had gone terribly wrong with their first contact attempt. The silence that had followed their peaceful message was an indication of technological problems or communication delays. In Kythera culture, as they would later learn, silence after a first contact greeting was interpreted as a declaration of hostile intent. The Kythera had spent 50,000 years perfecting their military technologies while their civilization slowly died. Their automated systems had kept their war fleets functional even as their colonies fell silent one by one. When Elena's message arrived, followed by silence, the ancient protocols activated. The Kythera Empire, or what remained of it, was preparing for war. Jake's worst fears were being realized as more ships continued to arrive. Long-range communications with Earth were being jammed by Kythera technology. The Terra Nova was trapped in the middle of an escalating situation that could lead to the first interstellar war in human history. Elena stood on her bridge, watching the alien fleet maneuver around them with terrifying precision. She had come seeking peace and discovery, hoping to represent the best of humanity to the stars. Instead, she had apparently triggered a conflict that could destroy both civilizations. But Elena Vasquez had not become a starship captain by giving up when situations became difficult. As the Kythera fleet completed its battle formation and Earth's own defense forces began mobilizing in response to the crisis, she began formulating a plan that would require every ounce of human determination and ingenuity she could muster. The real test of humanity's character was about to begin. Part 2. The Power of Human Determination. The situation in Earth's solar system had become desperate within 72 hours of the first Kythera ships arriving. Elena watched through the Terra Nova's main viewer as massive alien vessels took up positions throughout the system. Each Kythera warship was a kilometer-long testament to advanced military engineering, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and shielded by energy fields that seemed to bend space itself. Admiral Marcus Stone commanded Earth's defense fleet from his flagship, the heavy cruiser Defiance. He was a career military officer who had spent 40 years preparing for exactly this kind of scenario, though he had never imagined the enemy would be this overwhelmingly superior. His fleet consisted of 37 ships of various classes, representing the finest vessels in the human space navy. Against the Kythera Armada, they looked like toys. "Admiral," reported Commander Sarah Martinez from the communication station, "we're still receiving no response to our diplomatic overtures. The alien fleet has taken up strategic positions around Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies. They're not attacking, but they're clearly prepared to do so at any moment." Elena's voice crackled through the communication system from her position near the ancient beacon. "Admiral Stone, this is Captain Vasquez. I believe I understand what's happening here. The Kythera culture has specific protocols for first contact situations. Our silence after initial greeting has been interpreted as a declaration of war." Admiral Stone frowned as he studied the tactical displays showing alien ship positions. "Captain, even if you're right about their interpretation, how do we fix this? They won't respond to our communications, and any aggressive move on our part could trigger the destruction of every human colony." Elena had been working non-stop since realizing the magnitude of the misunderstanding. Dr. Chen and her xenobiology team had been analyzing every scrap of information they could extract from the ancient beacon, trying to understand Kythera psychology and culture. What they had discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The Kythera had once been a peaceful civilization, much like humanity. They had built their empire through exploration and cooperation, establishing colonies across hundreds of star systems. but they had encountered something in the void between galaxies, something that had systematically destroyed their civilization over the course of thousands of years. The survivors had become increasingly militaristic, developing weapons and defensive strategies that had kept them alive, but had also isolated them from potential allies. Admiral, Elena continued, according to the cultural data we've extracted, the Kythera respect determination above all other qualities. They believe that truly intelligent species will persist in their communication attempts regardless of initial responses. Our silence convinced them that we lacked the determination necessary for meaningful contact. Commander Park had been working around the clock to establish better communication protocols with the Kythera fleet. The breakthrough came when she realized that their silence wasn't complete rejection, but rather a test. The Kythera were waiting to see if humanity would demonstrate the persistence that their culture valued so highly. Captain, Park reported excitedly, I'm detecting response patterns in their communication arrays. They're not ignoring us completely. They're monitoring our transmissions and cataloging our attempts. It's like they're scoring our persistence. Elena felt a surge of hope as she understood what this meant. The Kythera weren't preparing to attack because they considered humans enemies. They were preparing to attack because they had concluded that humans lacked the determination to be worthy allies. In their culture, species that gave up easily were considered unreliable and potentially dangerous. Jake Morrison had been coordinating with Admiral Stone's fleet, preparing defensive strategies that everyone knew would be futile against Kythera technology. But now he saw Elena's plan beginning to form, and he recognized the stubborn determination that had made her one of Starfleet's most respected captains. Captain, Jake said, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, it's going to require more persistence than any human has ever shown. The Kythera have been testing species for 50,000 years. Their standards for determination are literally beyond anything we've ever attempted. Elena smiled for the first time in days. Jake, you've served with me long enough to know that impossible is just another word for difficult. Humans don't give up. That's what makes us human. What followed was the most sustained communication effort in human history. Elena coordinated with teams on Earth, Mars, and every human colony to begin a continuous stream of messages to the Kythera fleet. Every communication array in human space began broadcasting simultaneously, sending messages of peace, cooperation, and determined friendship. The content of the messages was less important than their persistence. Elena's team worked in shifts around the clock, ensuring that the communication never stopped. When equipment failed, they repaired it immediately. When power systems overloaded, they found alternatives. When exhaustion threatened to stop the effort, fresh volunteers stepped forward to continue. Dr. Chen contributed by analyzing Kythera responses and adjusting their communication strategies accordingly. She discovered that the aliens were indeed scoring human persistence, but their standards were almost impossibly high. They expected potential allies to maintain communication efforts for months or even years without receiving meaningful responses. Captain, Dr. Chen reported after analyzing the latest Kythera signal patterns, they're beginning to show interest in our efforts. The mathematical complexity of their response signals is increasing, which seems to indicate growing respect for our determination. Elena had been awake for 36 hours straight, personally overseeing the communication effort from the Terra Nova's bridge. Her eyes were red with exhaustion, but her voice remained strong and determined. Then we keep going. Every human in the solar system needs to understand that we don't stop until we succeed. The effort became a rallying point for all of humanity. News networks carried live coverage of the communication attempt. Children in schools began sending their own messages to the alien fleet. Artists created works inspired by the determination to achieve peaceful contact. Scientists shared their research freely, hoping to contribute to the success of the mission. Admiral Stone found himself commanding not just a military defense, but a coordinated effort involving every aspect of human civilization. His warships maintained their defensive positions, but their crews also participated in the communication effort, adding their voices to the growing chorus of human determination. The breakthrough came on the seventh day of continuous communication. Commander Park detected a subtle change in the Kythera fleet's formation. The massive ships began moving from purely defensive positions into what appeared to be a more diplomatic arrangement. More importantly, they began responding to human communications with increasingly complex mathematical progressions. Elena recognized the moment when everything changed. The lead Kythera vessel, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed anything in the human fleet, opened a direct communication channel with the Terra Nova. The voice that emerged was ancient and tired, but it carried undertones of genuine respect. Human vessel Terra Nova. The Kythera commander spoke in perfect English. I am Fleet Marshal Kithfar of the 7th Fleet. Your species has demonstrated the determination required for meaningful contact. We acknowledge your persistence and offer formal communication protocols. Elena felt tears of relief and joy streaming down her face as she responded. Fleet Marshal Kithfar, this is Captain Elena Vasquez. Humanity offers friendship, cooperation, and mutual assistance. We answered your beacon's call for help, and we stand ready to provide whatever aid we can. What followed was a revelation that transformed human understanding of the galaxy. The Kythera Empire had been fighting a defensive war against an extragalactic threat for thousands of years. They had developed incredible military technologies and survival strategies, but they had paid a terrible price in isolation and cultural stagnation. Fleet Marshal Kithfar explained their testing protocols during the formal first contact ceremony held aboard the Terra Nova. Many species respond to our beacon, he said, his form appearing as a shimmering hologram of crystalline beauty. Most offer help, but when we test their determination through silence, they abandon their efforts within days. Such species cannot be trusted as allies in our long war. Elena listened with fascination as the Kythera commander described their centuries-long conflict with beings they called the Void Hunters, creatures that existed in the spaces between galaxies and consumed entire civilizations. The Kythera had survived by developing ultimate defensive capabilities, but they had never been able to find reliable allies. Your species, Kithfar continued, has demonstrated the most sustained determination we have encountered in 50,000 years of testing. 7 days of continuous communication, involving your entire civilization, despite receiving no meaningful response. This level of persistence indicates that humans can be trusted as true allies. Dr. Chen was practically vibrating with excitement as she began learning about Kythera technology and culture. Their engineering capabilities were indeed centuries ahead of human science, but more importantly, their need for determined allies created opportunities for genuine cooperation. Admiral Stone found himself negotiating humanity's first interstellar military alliance. The Kythera offered to share defensive technologies in exchange for human assistance in their long war against the Void Hunters. More significantly, they offered to help humanity expand into the galaxy under their protection. Elena realized that what had begun as a simple rescue mission had evolved into something far more significant. Humanity had passed its first major test as a galactic civilization, not through superior technology or military might, but through the simple human quality of never giving up. The formal alliance ceremony took place in Earth orbit, with representatives from both civilizations participating. Elena stood beside Fleet Marshal Kithfar as they signed the documents that would bind their species together in friendship and mutual defense. Captain Vasquez, Kithfar said as the ceremony concluded, your determination to help strangers in need, despite the risks to your own people, exemplifies the qualities we have sought in allies for millennia. The Kythera Empire is honored to call humanity friend. Elena looked out at the stars surrounding Earth, now knowing that humanity was no longer alone in its corner of the galaxy. The Terra Nova had set out to explore the unknown and had instead discovered that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't superior technology or overwhelming firepower. It was the simple human refusal to give up when something mattered. As the combined human and Kythera fleets began planning their expansion into the galaxy, Elena reflected on the lesson they had all learned. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from fighting harder, but from persisting longer. Sometimes silence wasn't rejection, but simply a test of how much you cared about success. And sometimes, the best way to make friends in the universe was to prove that you would never abandon them, no matter how long they made you wait for an answer.